How would you describe Humpty? Tell me. An egg. All right.
Round.
Round. All right. Big. You said big?
I said big.
Oh, man.
Looking at this one.
Humpty Dumpty. How would you describe him?
Fat.
Fat.
Egg.
All right.
Had a big head.
Big head. All right.
Cartoon.
All right. Cartoon.
Funny.
Said funny.
Mm-hmm. Bald.
Bald.
Clumsy.
Clumsy. You know what I want to ask y'all? Who told y'all all this? Who told y'all Humpty Dumpty was an egg? Who told y'all he was fat? Who told y'all he was clumsy? Who told y'all that? Huh? The song? Let's sing it again. Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. All the king's horses, all the king's men couldn't put Humpty together again. What about that makes you think he an egg?
Pictures, though.
How much?
Pictures.
The pictures.
Perception.
Perception. So you saw it somewhere. Somebody drew what they wanted Humpty Dumpty to be for you. And you believed it. Can I tell you where it came from? Y'all want to know where it came from?
Yeah.
There's a king, King Richard III, that was king in the 1400s, right? So back then, scoliosis was a little more common, and it was not as treatable, right? And so he had a hump in the shoulder, right? So he walked a little differently. He looked a little differently. He was somewhat deformed, right? So King Richard actually died in battle. So the story about him falling and the king's men, not being able to put him together again, he was the king. And they couldn't put him together again, meaning that he got killed in that battle, right? People didn't like King Richard. He was not a well-received king. People thought that he was weak because of the scoliosis, but also because of his decision-making or lack thereof, which is why he went to battle. He was like, I'm going to fight in this war. They're not going to keep saying I'm weak. And he ended up dying, right? Shakespeare did a play about Humpty Dumpty like 100 or so years later on, right? And then suddenly another guy made it popular in the 1800s, all right? So he lived in the late 1400s, all right? Shakespeare came along, I think, like the 1600s, right? 200 years later, somebody made a famous story about him being an egg and falling off a wall. 1800s, is when it kind of became like a nursery rhyme sort of thing. And now we're in 2022. We're 800 years removed from Humpty Dumpty, King Richard. And people are still talking about King Richard. Because guess what? We're talking about it right now. And we're talking about it the wrong way. Because he wasn't an egg, he wasn't round. I don't know if he was fat or not, but we can't prove that. We don't know how big his head was. We don't know if he was bald. We don't know any of that. But somebody that was more prominent and more liked than him took his life and made it their perception. Somebody that interacted with him or heard of him wrote a story about him and sensationalized it to a point where it was no longer him. Why is that important, right? And you guys can turn to page 7. That's a picture of Humpty Dumpty on there, right?
Perception.
Why is that important?
They created perception.
They created perception, right? Now they want you to believe that because they didn't like him. So my point is, and we can go to the next page after that picture on page 8, you can set out a brand for yourself, but other people can set out a brand for you too, if you're not careful. So you have to be working harder on your brand than other people are working on your brand, especially if they don't have your best interest at heart. This thing called success is not always a clear path. It's not always a situation where people are not in the way. We all have a past. We all have things we've done that we shouldn't have done. We have things that we've done to people we shouldn't have done. We have things we've done to ourselves we shouldn't have done. And there's always somebody that has a previous outdated perception of us. And if that person feels strong enough about it, they can go on a campaign and try to smear your name.